West British Columbia is still in a haze after the wildfires burning across the border and the local fire in New Westminster over the weekend. Some cities are experiencing air quality levels high enough to pose serious health risks. The worst air quality in the world right now is in actually Vancouver. And then Donald Trump's blaming it all on forest management. What is the cause of all this? We're joined by Jonathan Wilkinson. He's the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, just out of their cabinet retreat. Minister, hope you and your family are well, and thanks for taking the time to do that. What kind of support is the federal government offering British Columbia to deal with this smoke?
Well, I mean, of course, we have active conversations with the government of British Columbia all the time. As you said, Vancouver has the worst air quality in the world at this point, being driven by smoke that actually is not produced in British Columbia, but is coming up from the United States and from the terrible wildfires that are happening there. So if British Columbia has a request, they know that they can certainly ask that of us, and we are certainly happy to respond.
The president just said that the cause of the fires is forest management and mismanagement, not getting rid of fallen leaves and fallen trees. Do you agree with him, or is there something else in your view that is the cause?
Well, I mean, when folks ask questions about things like these forest fires, I go back to, I rely on science, and the scientists have been telling us for a long time that, while you can't necessarily point to specific instances and say that the cause is climate change, the fact that we're having increasing numbers of events, of weather events, such as this, such as the wildfires that happened in Alberta, such as the flooding in Alberta and Quebec and New Brunswick, that those are signs of climate change. And these are happening with increased frequency, with increased duration and intensity, and it is a function in large measure of a changing climate. And that's just science, that's not politics.
Okay, but just what about, I just want your view on, quote, forest management. The president of the United States said you got to cut down sections to stop the spread. You got to clear the brush, get rid of the leaves. I guess he said trees explode as well. What is your view? Is he right? Does forest management play a big role here? Is that the key?
Well, I think appropriate forest management is always going to be important. I mean, this has been a conversation in British Columbia for a long time, where clearing out underbrush and those kinds of things are important. Fire breaks can be very important. You know, the fires around Kelowna over the last number of years have shown us that forest management can be an important thing. But I would say that, you know, the ultimate cause of a lot of these extreme events, such as the fires we're seeing, is the changing climate. And you know, we, based on science, will expect to be seeing more and more of these, unfortunately, if we do not get a handle on our greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You're in the middle of the cabinet retreat. There's a speech in the throne. John Ivison in the National Post wrote an article saying that in order to meet Canada's Paris Climate Accord targets, you will be introducing the Canada Fuel Standard, which is a tax on the fossil fuel industry to make them comply. Many believe that will be passed on to consumers. I think Mr. Ivison called it a secret carbon tax. Will this be introduced, and can you give us any details?
Well, I would, with due respect to Mr. Ivison, I think it'd be good if he actually checked the facts. This is a policy on which we've been consulting with Canadians since 2017. It is focused on reducing the carbon content of fuels, not in a dissimilar way to the blending of ethanol and renewable fuels as done in Canada today. It is an opportunity to drive domestic economic opportunity through biofuels, hydrogen, renewable natural gas, and a range of other low-carbon fuels. It is an important part of Canada's climate plan, but it's also an important part about driving forward with a lower carbon economy that's going to employ Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
I mean, the concern is, so you're confirming that the Canadian Fuel Standard, which you're right, has been talked about for a long time, is going to come. Will the price of gas and the price of home heating go up, especially in a pandemic where many Canadians are suffering? Will those things go up in price because of this?
Well, first of all, I mean, again, this is something that we've been consulting on for several years. This is nothing new, and I'm not sure where Mr. Ivison got his information, because I actually released an update on it several months ago, which provided additional relaxation with respect to the ramp at the front end, precisely to give more time for industry to make the investments that they would need to make. to be in compliance with this, so that this doesn't really even come into force until 2022. It will drive domestic investment in things like biofuels, be very good for the prairies, in hydrogen, in renewable natural gas. It will be an economic generator, an engine for this country. Nice. And it's an important part of Canada doing its part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions here domestically and eventually around the world.
Just before I let you go, Minister, we've just heard that the entire Bloc Québécois caucus is now in isolation because a staffer at their caucus meeting a number of days ago has tested positive for COVID-19. Will there be a mechanism in Parliament for them to vote, for example, on the speech from the throne if the entire Bloc Québécois is in isolation? Can they vote virtually?
Well, I certainly hope so. You know, we've been talking about this for some time, and the government has been supportive, as has the Bloc and the NDP and the Greens, of finding a mechanism through which we can actually have people vote remotely. I mean, at the end of the day, bringing 338 members of Parliament to Ottawa and back every year from their communities makes no sense in the middle of a pandemic. And so my hope is that we will get agreement on the part of all the parties to have remote voting, and that would include people being able to vote remotely if they're in quarantine.
All right, I got to leave it there. Minister Wilkinson, who jumped out of the cabinet retreat for this, I appreciate it very much, sir. Thanks so much, Minister.
Thank you.